Hi everyone and welcome to Chickadee Cottage Creations. My name is Amanda and in today's video I will be showing you 3 thrift flips using items from Sonnet's Maker's Box and one of the IOD summer molds. If you enjoy crafting, upcycles, thrift flips, DIYs, and so much more, I really hope you'll consider sticking around and subscribing to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Let's get started. So this one is something that I'd actually picked up at the bins and the Goodwill bins, and I'm not even sure what I paid for it. It was next to nothing, but it looked, I'm honestly not sure what it was for. You can see that looked like a screw hole in the middle there. Not entirely sure what it was, but as soon as I saw it, I kind of knew that I wanted to make a tray out of it. So I picked up those kind of half balls at Hobby Lobby, and I think I got them when they were 40% off, so they only cost a few dollars. And I'm just going to use some Gorilla Glue right now to go ahead and attach those. It's the Gorilla wood glue that I'm going to be attaching those with. And I eyeball it. I'm notorious, whether it's notoriously bad or not, I'm not sure, but I pretty much eyeball everything. I very rarely measure. So that's just kind of my thing. However you want to do it, if it's easier for you to measure, go right on ahead and measure. I've just usually had pretty decent luck with eyeballing it. So I'm just positioning these out on there. And this here is the next day. I'm double checking that they're on there securely. They very much are. And now I'm going to get started painting it. So I removed the sticker off camera and I'm just giving it a quick wipe down. There was a little bit of just residue, so I wiped it off real quick. And please ignore the mess around my workstation. I'll be working on that in next video so that it doesn't look like I had a craft fair explode onto my table. But now I'm going to be taking some of the DIY paint from Debbie's Design Diary, and this one is the White Swan. I'm going to be using the Perfectionist brush. It's an excellent brush. I absolutely love it. It's really good for getting into hard to reach spaces. It's just really nice to use. Absolutely worth the investment. But I'm doing one fairly even coat. I'm not super concerned, especially in the middle there, since that's where I'm going to be actually putting some decoupage paper. But I'm just giving it kind of a rough first coat here. And I do go back in and I paint the bottom except for the round balls later. I leave those the natural wood color. I just kind of like that look. And then I use my heat gun just to dry it a little bit. It doesn't actually take too long. This paint dries pretty fast. And this is obviously sped up a little bit. And then once that's done, I'm going to do a second coat. I think I ended up doing 3 coats, but I don't believe I got the 3rd coat on camera. I was just checking it there to make sure that it was done. So I'm going ahead now and I'm applying that second coat. And you can see here it's starting to look pretty good. Pretty straightforward, just painting it on. The thing I love about the DIY paint is that it levels so nicely. It's pretty hard to see all of the brush strokes once you're done. Alright. And you blast it a little bit again to dry it some more. This heat gun I actually had picked up off of Amazon. I absolutely love it. So this is one of the papers from Sonnet's Maker's Box. I don't remember right off the top of my head what this one is called, but I absolutely love it. I've loved all of the papers that we've received in the box so far, and if you're not familiar with Sonnet's Maker's Box, I will include a link in the description. I highly recommend checking it out. If you just enjoy being challenged a little bit. Some of these have been challenges for me because they're things I might not have necessarily picked out for myself. But you get 2 custom papers designed specifically for the Maker's Box from recycled papers in here, and this happens to be one of them. And I loved this. Initially I thought I was going to go with a text above this, but I ended up deciding on this one right here. And as you can see, I'm just using my fingernail to kind of create an impression in here, just so that I can know where to cut. And luckily this particular circle piece had a nice little ridge right there, so it made it pretty easy. And as you can see, there's so much paper left over. Even after I'm just cutting out this little section, there's still quite a bit of paper left over, and there's going to be a lot of other projects that I can do with this. I actually already have a table piece in mind that I want to use some of this for. Alright, so now that I've got that, well, somewhat cut out, I'm actually going to cut it a little better here. And as you can see, this is sped up. I'm not actually this good at fussy cutting at that speed, so take however long you need to cut out whatever it is you're cutting out. And then I'm going to just kind of place it on there just to make sure that the layout's pretty good. And I absolutely love the way that just pops off the color. It's a really nice contrast. So I'm just kind of going through making sure that it looks good. And I do see one area there in the bottom left. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little bit of a tag on the edge there. I'm just going to quickly clip that off. And then now I'm going to, now that I've made sure that it looks pretty good there, I'm going to take my DIY liquid patina. This is very similar to Mod Podge. It's just a decoupage medium. Can be used for some other things too, for sealing, things like that. I used to use Mod Podge when I first started crafting. Now I will only use this. I think it's a lot higher quality. It's kind of hard to explain why. I think it just, it's a little thinner than Mod Podge. It also doesn't tend to have that yellowing issue that Mod Podge can have, and I just really like it. But as you can see there on the right hand side, I applied a starter strip, and I just went ahead and attached that very right side with a starter strip, and I'm using my hand to kind of smooth it out as I go along. And then once I have a section done, I'll apply a layer over the top just to kind of keep it going. And I just go through and I do that each time as I will lift it, apply a bit of a strip, lay it down, flatten it out, apply some over the top, and then rinse and repeat. And some people use, like saran wrap to kind of smooth it out. I just usually use my fingers. It works really well for me. And it's a pretty quick process here. I could have misted the paper. That might have helped to smooth out a few of the wrinkles a little easier, but since it was such a small piece, I wasn't super worried about that. And now that I've got that all done, I'm just going to go through, look for any wrinkles, keep smoothing out a little bit more until I'm satisfied with the result. Alright, so this is after it's dried. I'm going to, because DIY paint can be reactivated with water or anything like that if it's not sealed, I'm actually going to use that here to take a wet nap, and I'm going to just kind of wet distress it. So I'm going to randomly pick spots and just rub, and I apologize that the camera's shaking. This is my first video, so my setup that I actually had the camera attached to this particular table, and this table is a little more shaky than the one I usually use for crafting, so it would kind of rattle the camera whenever I was doing that. But now that I've got that distressing done to how I wanted it, I'm taking some Big Top, and this is just a sealer. I'm going to go and apply a nice even coat across the entire thing to seal it in. If I didn't do this, like I said, the DIY paint could be reactivated if something wet were to get on it at any point. And it's just a quick process of just applying it on with a nice even coat. I do apply it on the sides as well. And what you don't see is I do also off camera seal the back as well. But I had to wait for this to dry first. I'm just touching up a few spots. And this project is complete. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if there's anything you might have done differently, or if you've had a chance to try Sonnet's Maker's Box yet. I absolutely love the papers we get. And then here I'm going to show just a couple options as far as styling. Now we are on to project 2. This one was a little bit of a challenge for me at first. So I saw a live that, or maybe it wasn't a live, it might have just been a video that Royce from Recycled Treasures did, where she decoupaged onto a basket. So I kind of wanted to give that a try, and I found this basket at the bins. The bins are amazing. I just discovered them recently, and it's amazing all the different things that people kind of just overlook. So this is another one of the papers from Sonnet's Maker's Box. This is from Connie at the Painted Photographer. She's amazing. Everything she paints is just absolutely stunning. And so I wanted to use this on the basket. In my initial plan, this is the Fusion Blue Pine. This also came in the Maker's Box. Nice thing about Fusion paint is it's got a built-in primer and sealer, so you really don't have to do much other than paint. And in this case, I only needed one coat, which was pretty amazing. It's got excellent coverage, so this little container of paint is going to last me for quite a while. So I sped up the painting because obviously you don't want to watch me paint the entire thing, but I used my brush here just to get in all the cracks, and kind of took my time going through, just making sure that I got everything. I love this color. It's a really nice, just kind of a calming, soothing blue. So here you can see I kind of finished, and I'm just touching up the tops there. And so the idea is that I want to decoupage this paper onto it, but my vision changed a bit, several times actually throughout this process, just because of things I encountered along the way. So I'm just about done here, just doing a couple little touch-ups. Alright, so it looks pretty good. I let it dry. And once it was dry, here, so my initial thought was that I was going to put some of this burlap in a square, and I was going to fray the edges. And then on top of that burlap, after I cut it out here, I ended up not using the burlap at all, but I just kind of wanted to show you what my process was throughout and how it changed. So I had this vision that I was going to do the burlap, I was going to fray the edges so that it had kind of a nice rustic look to it. And I went ahead and cut out the one that I was going to use, and I do still end up using this one. But as mentioned, I don't use the burlap. So my vision was I was going to take some of this white linen, which actually I haven't shown you that yet. What I'm doing here is I'm just using some water to kind of create a border around the image. I don't want a perfectly straight border. That just wouldn't go with the whole look that I had in my mind. So when you do the water like this, it makes it pretty easy to tear. The Connie's papers are a little thicker than Royce's papers, which is great. It's perfect for decoupaging on the basket. So I just needed to use a little bit extra water there. But as you can see, it tears pretty easily, and it gives me kind of this nice unfinished edge, which I really love. I'll just go through and tear the rest of it. Alright, so now that I've got that done, this is where I then pull out the linen that I had wanted to use. It was something I'd picked up at a, might have been a Salvation Army resale store. I don't remember exactly where. So my vision was that I was going to decoupage that onto the linen, attach that to the burlap behind it, and then attach it to the basket. This would have been a great idea, except that there wasn't enough room. So I wouldn't have been able to do the linen and the burlap at the same time. So I ended up just deciding to do the linen. I apparently did not record myself cutting the linen out there. So I go ahead and grab the DIY liquid patina again, and the lid was a little sealed solid, so I ended up having to use my heat gun a couple times just to get it loose. I'm sure you've all done that. Seen some excellent tips from people to use saran wrap on the top to kind of prevent that. I just haven't tried that yet. So what I'm doing is I'm just applying a starter strip on one side, and I'm then going through and attaching this to the linen. And I had actually not decoupaged into fabric before, and it worked amazingly well, especially with this paper. It was a great texture. Oh, my light apparently shut off there briefly. But it decoupaged really well. Went on perfectly. No wrinkles of any kind. It was perfect. So this worked out really well. I had wanted to fray the edges of this linen too, but this particular linen, it was very difficult to do. So I just kind of kept changing my vision as it went along. So as you can see here, I'm just going through doing a little strip at a time, and I'm continuously going through applying the strip, putting the paper down, and then applying liquid patina over the top of it. And once that's all done, I set it aside to dry. You can see there, no wrinkles or anything. Alright, so here it's dry. What I end up doing then is I then use the liquid patina again, and I decoupage it to the basket. I'd never done this before. Again, I said this was something that Royce had done on one of her videos, and I wanted to give it a try. So I just, again, start at one edge. I'm intentionally trying to have the shape of the basket come through. So what I'm doing is just kind of pushing it into all the little grooves and indents that I find there, just because I do want that shape to show through. I want to keep some of the texture of the basket. And just like everything else, I did a little starter strip and then just kept going through, adding another strip, putting some more down, putting patina over the top, and then going on to the next section. As you can see, I keep kind of trying to push it into the little grooves. So here it is. I'm pretty happy with how it's looking there. And this is where I actually deviated quite a bit from my original plan. I didn't mind the look of this, but it just looked kind of unfinished and not really anything I was super happy with. So I pulled out one of my redesign molds, and I'm going to use the one on the very right there, and I'm using some DOS clay. And I'm going to kind of create a frame around this item on the basket, just because I feel like it's missing something. It really, I was not loving it at this point. So I put some cornstarch in the mold first. Usually I prefer resin, but because the basket had such uneven edges and it was going to have to curve a little bit, that's when I usually will pull out my air dry clay. It's just a lot easier then to get it to mold the way I want it to. Otherwise, resin is usually my go-to choice for molds. But in this case, I just dust the mold with some cornstarch, and then I pull out some of the clay, and I go ahead and kind of rub it out a little bit just to make it a little longer there so that it can fit into the mold without me having to do too much work. I apologize for the shaky camera. This is when I really realized how much having the camera attached to my table was going to be a problem, but I was already in the middle of it, so I will just have to fix that for next time. But I'm just pushing it into all the elements of the mold. Sometimes I do use a scraper to kind of go over the top, but in this case I wasn't super worried about that. I wasn't needing the back to be super flat, especially since it was going on the basket. So I just kind of keep rubbing along the top of it to pull off any extra clay. I do like the redesign molds, but the IOD molds have that nice rim around the edges of them that makes it a little easier to do this part, but that's okay. It's not a problem here, so I just keep working at it until I get it all in the shape that I want. And it's pretty close to done there. Probably could have sped this up for you guys, sorry about that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to let gravity do a lot of the work, but I'm also going to kind of gently nudge it out of the mold. The cornstarch makes it pretty easy for it to just kind of fall out almost. There are a few sections, especially with this one because of the way it gets narrow in the middle there, that I have to kind of help it along a bit. But as you can see, it turned out really nicely. I'm just checking it here to make sure that that's what I want to do. Pick it up and just place it over the top. And take a look and see if I like it or not. And I do. So then what I end up doing is I end up casting 3 more of that exact mold, and I somehow got really lucky. They fit exactly. 4 of these molds total fit exactly around that space that I wanted to do. So you'll notice here that I have quite a few sections where the mold falls apart, or the casting falls apart. That's perfectly okay. This glues so well that no one will ever know that any of these pieces broke off. So it's not a problem at all. See here, I'm just kind of laying it out. And that's when I was super happy to realize that it fit exact. Alright, so now that I've got that, oh, I guess I did play with it a little bit more. There you see some of those pieces falling off. It was really thin in a few sections, so I kind of expected that. It wasn't a big deal at all. Alright, so now I've decided that I do like that, and I definitely want to go with that. So then I get out my Tight Bond Quick and Thick. Love this stuff. Pretty much my go-to for gluing just about anything down. There are some times that I use other things, but it's the one I use the most. And look at, we had another piece break apart there, but again, it's perfectly fine. Not a problem at all, especially with the clay. And I just apply a little bit of a strip and I kind of spread it out across, and then I'm just applying it to the basket. I'm kind of gently pushing in on the basket just to kind of get it to mold to the shape of the basket and adhere. And I go through and I do that for all of the pieces. I've become a bit of a mold fanatic. That might sound a little strange if you weren't familiar with crafting molds, but IOD molds, redesign molds, molds I found on Amazon, I love them. I love them for so many different things. And actually the next project you'll see me using one of the new IOD molds. Got a little bit extra cornstarch there, so I was just kind of brushing that off. And I think it's providing a pretty nice little outline around this design. More pieces breaking off, but again, it's not a big deal at all. And again, more pieces breaking off. I think at this point it was kind of starting to dry a little bit, so it wasn't staying together as well, but it was perfectly fine. I just worked a little faster. And once we get that last one glued down, I then let it dry for a couple hours. I just wanted to make sure that it was very secure when I went on to this next step. Because I do not want to leave this like this. I mean, it looks okay, but it doesn't look finished or polished. There we are. Alright, so for this last step, what I decided that I was going to do is I'm going to take that same paint that I painted the basket with, the Fusion Blue Pine, and I'm going to paint that mold that same color. It kind of makes the artwork then in the middle the focus when you kind of hide that mold with by making it the same color as the basket. And it's also super handy because then I don't have to worry about being sloppy on the outsides because it's the exact same color as the basket, so it's not going to show at all. So I started painting the mold here, and don't worry, I don't make you watch me paint the entire thing. I do cut to the end here shortly, but I have to be a little careful on the inside. I don't want to get any on the paper. I have There were a few instances when I did get a little bit on the paper, and all I had to do was just take a Q-tip and wipe it off because that paper had the decoupage medium on it, so had a little bit of a surface that allowed me to quickly wipe it off. But this particular mold also has a lot of details, so I have to kind of go at all sorts of different angles and try to make sure that I get paint in all of those grooves and every little element there. And I ended up doing just one coat on this, but I did go back and touch up a few of the spots that I missed. And here I've just got that first coat done. I'm going through, you know, I see that there's a bunch of little spots that I missed there. So I'm turning it every which way, just checking to make sure. I definitely did miss a few. Quite a few, actually, if you're looking here at the video. All right. And once that's done, I let it dry. And I pulled out some of my summer floral that I had picked up at Michael's in their grab bag last year. And this is what the finished product looked like. From what I started, what I initially planned for it, to what it turned out to be, I actually really like it. It definitely fits more into my decor style once I put that frame on it. Without the frame, it just looks kind of unfinished, but I really ended up liking it. And now on to our third and final project. This one was a clipboard that I had picked up at the Goodwill bins. I believe it was a wedding clipboard at one point, but in this one I'm going to be using the Sweet Pickens milk paint that I just showed you right there. This was something that came in the maker's box, and I'm also going to be using, I briefly showed it there, the IOD, I think it's called Oak and Acorns mold. I love this one. It's from the new summer release. I am a huge fall fanatic, so this one just, Oak Leaves and Acorns, that's what it's called, sorry. This one just really spoke to me. I felt like I needed to have it, so of course I got it right away. To start, I'm going to be using some of the Amazing Cast-In resin. If you haven't used this, it sets to the point where you can use it in about 10 minutes. There are two parts, a part A and a part B, and as you can see here, the IOD molds actually tell you exactly how much you need to fill each mold. That is super helpful so that you don't waste resin. Resin isn't cheap. It's usually around like $25 for these two bottles. So any way I can make sure that I'm using exactly what I need to use, I absolutely love that. So I kind of roughly tallied what I would need, and I poured one into the line, and then I poured the other in, and it's equal parts A, equal parts B. You want to make sure that they're pretty exact, so I was checking my measurements exactly. And then you'll mix them, and as you see, it starts white, but as soon as it gets clear, and you'll start feeling it get a little bit warm in the container, that's when you know. Usually about 30 seconds is what you need to stir it, and once it's stirred, you can then pour. And again, the really nice thing about the IOD molds is they have that rim, I think it's called a micro rim around the edge, and it's so perfect for pouring resin into them. I can occasionally still get it to overflow if I'm not watching what I'm doing, but it makes them so perfect anytime you pour resin in. So I'm just kind of selecting some that I think I might use, and if I have a little bit left over, so I just start filling in some of the extras. I will for sure use them down the road, so I'm not worried about them going to waste. And then as you can see on the top left there, it's starting to turn white. Once it's completely white, usually it takes about 10 minutes, you'll be able to take those out of the mold then. So at this point, I'm going to mix the Sweet Pickens milk paint. Once mixed, and I do use a warm water, so it's not hot, but it's warm. Once it's mixed, you usually want to let it set for about 10 minutes before using it. And here it's also equal parts, so I'm going to take, I think that was a tablespoon of the paint, and then I add a tablespoon of the water. I think I ended up adding a little bit more water just because it was really thick, but generally it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So I'm just mixing it there, turning it a bit to check to see. And this color is absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love it. Kind of a green blue tone. But once it's mixed, I'm going to set it off to the side and let it sit for 10 minutes. And at that point, we're getting about to the 10-minute mark where I can take those out of the mold. I think they just needed a couple more minutes. So all I'm going to do is just kind of on the edges, I kind of pull the mold back a little bit, and it's so satisfying to pull these out. I was a little careful with the branches just because they are still a little pliable, so I could bend these at this point if I wanted to. I don't need to for this, but I was just a little careful taking them out so that I didn't tear any of them. And then I just kind of try to decide on the placement. I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted it, and sorry I was off frame there for a moment. But I shifted around a little bit until I find a layout that is pleasing to my eye. Obviously you would want to do whatever looks good to you, but I was just kind of playing around trying to figure it out. And I think I get it here in a minute. Yep, there over the top. That's, yep. Pretty sure that's what I ended up deciding on. So then I'm going to take the Titebond Quick and Thick. Absolutely love this stuff. I know I've said that earlier in the video, but I'm just going to go through and apply all of those exactly as they are to the board, and then I'll let it sit. I think I let it sit maybe for an hour or so just to make sure that they're on there. Oh no, it was not an hour. Sorry, this one actually hardly waited at all. That's right, because I had the milk paint. So it's been, I think it was actually more like 15 minutes, but then I'd go ahead and I start painting with a milk paint. I ended up doing 2 coats. It gives pretty decent coverage. I did have this one a little more watered down than some of the other batches. This wood too just was absorbing it, even though it has that coat on it. It was still absorbing it pretty good, but I only did 2 coats. So you'll see here, I was just really careful because I couldn't unscrew that clip without stripping. It was in there really really tight. I tried to take it off to make it easier, but it was in there, so it's fine. I just painted carefully around it, and I made sure to get paint in the cracks there as well. I wanted this entire thing to be this color, and it gives pretty good coverage. The first one doesn't quite cover up all of the writing, but the second coat for sure did. So should be done here shortly. Thought I had, oh, there we go. I was gonna say, I thought I had cut that down a bit. All right, so here we're getting to the end, and you guys are probably gonna be yelling at me here shortly. I was at an angle where I didn't see it, but do you see that little white strip right at the top of the leaf on the bottom? I completely missed it. Didn't even notice it until the end of the second coat, and I had to go back and do a couple touch-ups on that. It happens, but yeah. So I finish with this, and then I take the heat gun to it and I dry it, and then I applied another layer. I definitely wanted to use the heat gun on this one because I love chippy. Anything chippy or any crazing, anything like that, I absolutely love it. I got a little bit in this, but not as much as I had hoped, and I think it's because the wood was kind of just sucking in the moisture from the paint. To get the chippiness, you really need something that isn't going to absorb it quite as much. I probably could have put something underneath it, like a spray shellac or something, but I didn't. It's all good. I still really like the way it turned out. But we're going to show now, this is after I've done the second coat, and I did get, as you can see on the right where I'm tapping there, I did get a little bit of crackle, and I absolutely love that crackle. Got a little bit on the left too. Not as much as I would have liked, but that's, I guess, the whole thing about milk paint. You never really know what you're going to get. So then I'm going to seal it with some Big Top. I am going to come in with some white wax afterwards, but I wanted to seal it with a Big Top first, just so that I could control the wax a little bit better if I needed to wipe it off a particular area. It would be a little easier to do with this heavy knit top coat. So I just go through and apply an even coat throughout the entire thing. I'm really careful around that section because I don't want to lose any of that crackle. I do end up moving it a little bit there, as you can see, but for the most part I kept it intact. And then I just go through and apply that coat throughout the entire thing. Then I let it dry. I think I let it dry maybe half an hour or so while I worked on other projects. And the white wax too is going to seal it. This just, like I said, I wanted to have a little bit extra control over that wax, and this gave me a base underneath that I had that. Alright, so now it's dry. And I come in now with the, let's see, I'm going to show it here in just a moment. The Dixie Belle Best Dang Wax in white. And I'm going to cover this entire thing in wax. And I do apologize for the shaking table here. This is another moment when I realized just how bad having the camera attached to the table was. So that will be fixed in future videos, but I ended up picking it up and was kind of working at a bit of an awkward angle, but it still worked. And I just went through and covered this entire thing in wax. Tried to get into all the little cracks here in the leaves, all the little detail that you can see there, because that's really ultimately what I want to bring out, is I want to bring out all the detail in the leaves and the acorns. And honestly, this toned down blue-green is absolutely right in my decor style. So then I let that sit for about 15 minutes, and then I come back in with a cloth. And again, I pick it up so I try not to shake the camera. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to wipe back the wax. It's going to leave quite a bit of wax on there still, but it's also going to pull up enough where you can see a lot of the detail in the leaves and the acorns. It's going to really just kind of make that pop. It's going to settle in those details to kind of really show them off. And the wax does take a bit to cure. I think it's 2 to 3 weeks for it to cure, but once it's cured, this project is going to be pretty safe around a lot of elements. So I just go through, like you can see, I'm just kind of rubbing over the top. There are a few spots where I don't want as much wax, where I'll try to get into the details a little bit. And then on the leaves themselves, I want a good amount of white wax in there just because I think it makes it pop. Alright, and I'm pretty satisfied with how it's looking there. I do try to get a little bit of that white out of the crack, but actually in the end I really like having that white kind of poke through, especially since off camera I had painted white around the edges of the frame. It's not a frame, I guess, an easel. And here's the final project. As you can see, you can really see the detail there. It really just kind of pops it out, and the white wax on that wood actually makes it look like a wood grain, even though this is like a pressed particle board. But I'm really happy with how this one turned out. And here I just threw a picture of my daughter when she was younger on here, just for an example of how you could stage it. I'll take a quick look at all the project again. I would love to know which was your favorite. If there's anything you might be trying from this, if you have any interest in Sonnet's Maker's Box. I will be uploading hopefully 1 video a week. That's my goal. I appreciate you so much stopping by today and taking the time to watch my first video. It's going to be a learning process, so hopefully they will continue to get better. I know this one's probably a little long for a starting video, but hopefully I'll be able to tweak my process as we go forward and be able to get you some more streamlined videos. Happy crafting, everyone!